With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hi, everyone. I'm Deb Flashenberg. Welcome to Yoga, Birth, Babies, a podcast produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. We will be diving into everything prenatal yoga, birth, and baby related, hoping to inspire, educate, and empower you through your journey into motherhood. Thank you for listening. Hi, everyone. I'm Deb Flashenberg. I'm your host for Yoga Birth Babies, and I just finished a fantastic conversation with Jessica Mougis. We talked about rainbow babies and miscarriage, and while that may not sound like just like a happy topic, the way that Jessica approached the conversation, it was rich, it was insightful, it was juicy. We hashed out her story, hashed out my story, and I think anyone that has gone through miscarriage or maybe going through it now or has supported anyone through it will find some real wisdom in this conversation. So it felt amazing to get back behind my microphone and put my headset back on. I have taken a little bit of a break from the podcast, and you might have noticed we put some renewed podcasts up, some of the older conversations, because I'm smack dab in the middle of a pretty extensive teacher training schedule. We just finished our New York teacher training about a month ago. And then last week I was in Charlotte, North Carolina at Yoga One with an amazing group of people. And then I'm back there in December. And then January and February, I'll be in Richmond, Virginia. And that still has a few spots. And then there's about 5 spots left for the New York spring teacher training. So 4 trainings from September through May. I love what I do, so I'm so honored that I get to do this. But then I decided, why not also add an online course? So during all this, I'm putting up Who's Afraid of the Pregnant Yogi, which is my online course. So there's quite a bit. But as I mentioned, it was so good to get back into the conversation and back on the podcast, which is something I'm truly passionate about. So thank you for being part of the community and listening and supporting all this. All right, so enjoy the podcast. It's with Jessica Mougis. She is the founder of Gem Yoga NYC. It's a company that specializes in classes and events for babies, children, and families in New York City. And she happens to teach at PYC. She teaches our Storytime Yoga class. So enjoy the conversation. Take care.
Looks like you need a vacation. Enter the 5-Hour Energy Where Will the Tide Take You sweepstakes. You could win a $10,000 dream beach vacation. Imagine jet setting off to a tropical paradise, having fun in the sun, or diving at a gorgeous reef. It's up to you. No purchase necessary. Go to 5HETide.com for official rules and to enter. That's 5HETide.com. Enter today. Ends June 30th, 2024.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you for giving me a few moments of your time. I'm so excited to speak with you.
Thanks for talking to me. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks. I love that when we can kind of pick people out of the community and hear more of their stories. Everyone has a story, and I feel like we don't get to know each other well enough. And as you know, community is so big at PYC. So I'm excited to hear about you and your history and your past and your pregnancies. So let's just jump into telling the community a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I live here in New York City in the Upper West Side, right near PYC. So I've been there for both my pregnancies. I have a 2-year-old daughter. I've got my husband and my dog here, and I'm currently expecting a baby boy, so pregnant now.
Yay.
And my background's in dance, so I had a modern dance company for a number of years, and I started teaching children's dance classes during that time. And then from there, I found children's yoga and just really, really loved that. So I've been teaching yoga to kids for about almost 10 years now. After having my daughter, I took a little break, and then I ended up starting my own company. It's called Gem Yoga NYC, and we have classes here in New York City for babies, families, children of all ages. And then I also write. So I've got a blog about motherhood, pregnancy, and that's liftedintotheworld.com. And I took a little hiatus on that, but I've started writing a little bit more recently.
That's great. So I didn't know that you had your own modern dance company. I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I went to Connecticut College. I was a dance major there, and then a friend, my friend Kate and I co-founded a company called No March Dance. We combined, it was my maiden name and her name, and we kind of toured around New York, Connecticut, New Jersey for a number of years. And I also make videos, so I would make like video installations that would be projected on the back of the stage, and we would have a dance that went along with it. So it was a ton of fun.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it was
I
great.
looked at Conn College briefly. When
Did
I was
you really?
when I was at Bard, I was actually considering transferring to Conn College. And then I talked to my mom. She's like, isn't Bard and Conn College pretty much the same thing? And I'm like,
Probably.
yeah. So I stayed put, and then I transferred to a conservatory of music. But yeah, it was,
Oh, okay. So that was different. Right.
yeah, it was different. And so then when I saw that on your bio, I'm like, oh, I didn't know she went there. It's a great dance program.
Yeah, the dance program's excellent.
Do you feel like, at least I have, so many yoga teachers have a dance background?
So many. Yeah, it's like kind of a natural progression, I feel, because I feel like after a while, my body was just aching.
It's a
hurting.
safer version of dance, especially vinyasa. Yeah. It's their safer version, because I remember it being in so many shows. I did musical theater, and many shows, they didn't care if it was a healthy position for the body. It was about the shape and the look. Especially, I remember doing, it was cabaret, and there was, it was so painful, this thing on these chairs. And it didn't matter. We had, this is what it was. So, yeah, I find a lot of dancers progress as, I don't want to say as we get older, but maybe as we get wiser with what's best for our body.
Absolutely. It just feels so good. When I first started yoga, I'm like, I've been hyperextending my knees this whole time.
Yeah, which was celebrated in dance. And,
exactly.
And you're like, this is why the back of my knees are always hurting. I get it now. So wonderful. I wanted to transition a little bit, because one of the reasons I wanted to speak with you is I can't believe I'd been in this yoga and birth world for so long, but it wasn't until recently I heard the term rainbow baby. And I didn't know that. In fact, when I looked a couple of years, like maybe a couple months ago, I was looking it up, and I was like, butterfly baby? I'm like, no, rainbow baby. So, do you want to talk a little bit about what that means and your own experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So right now I'm pregnant with my rainbow baby. So a rainbow baby is a baby that you have after pregnancy loss. I between my daughter and this current pregnancy, I had experience with a miscarriage, which was, devastating and really rocked my world. Even though I know how common miscarriages are, to experience it was really, it really brought me down. And so basically what happened was my daughter had turned 2. We decided that we wanted to have another baby, and we started trying, and it happened pretty quickly. I was very blessed. And I kind of was, with my daughter, I got spoiled because I got pregnant quickly, and the pregnancy was pretty uneventful. So I was kind of like, okay, here we go again. And I was feeling like it was going to be the same. But at my first appointment, I remember the doctor was doing the ultrasound, and she's like, what am I looking at here? And she seemed kind of confused. So my husband and I were like, oh no, is this not happening? Is there something wrong? So she brought in another doctor who gets on the ultrasound, looks, and goes, oh no, this is a twin pregnancy. Oh. She goes, that's not, I guess the other doctor thought maybe it was a hematoma and a sac, but she said, oh no, these are 2 sacs. This is a twin pregnancy. So we went from, in like 1 minute, we went from thinking I was pregnant to thinking I wasn't, to thinking we were having twins. Wow. So it was really like, whoa. So, but she said, it's really early. I was only maybe 5 weeks. So we don't see, the heartbeats yet, but come back next week and we'll take a look. And so we left that appointment, I think, just in shock, being like, oh my God, we're going to have twins. And we were planning on one baby. Like that day we were going to go look at new cars. We were like, maybe we shouldn't even look at cars. We might need a bigger car. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So for that week was brutal, just like the wait. And then at my second appointment, I saw the doctor, and she's looking, and she goes, okay, we saw a little flicker of a heartbeat in one sac, and then the other one was just empty. So she said, okay, this is very common. It's called a vanishing twin, which I hadn't heard about until this, but apparently it is fairly common where there are 2 sacs and 2 babies, and then one of them essentially just vanishes. It just goes away, and the other one's still there. So we said, okay, but I was there was something wrong. I just felt just something didn't seem right. Because even the heartbeat to me, she's like, you see that, right? You see that. And I did, but I was like.
Was she trying to convince you?
Yeah. It was like almost strange. Like she couldn't find the sound of it either. Huh. She could just see the flicker. So during that week, I had done a ton of research about twin pregnancies. And I was like, you know what? I'd like to see a specialist. Is there someone who specializes in twins that I can see and get another ultrasound? And she said, oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, they're affiliated with the hospital. So later that week, I made the appointment, and I wanted to go as soon as possible. So my husband wasn't able to get off of work. So I went alone, and I was so nervous. And I get there, and for those people who've gotten an ultrasound, so the ultrasound tech can't really tell you anything, which is hard. So I'm in the appointment, and she's looking, and I'm looking at the screen, and I'm thinking, okay, like I don't see anything. I don't see.
Did you see the flicker? Okay.
No, I didn't. And I'm like, it was strange. Like she's like really trying to look around, and I go, is there only one? And she goes, no, there's 2. And I'm like, okay, but I didn't see any flicker. So, I started to get that sinking feeling. She goes, okay, let me get the doctor. So the doctor comes in and starts looking. Also looks confused. She goes, wait, you saw the heartbeat a few days ago? I said, yeah, we did. I thought we did. We saw a flicker. Okay. Have you had any bleeding? No. Have you had cramping? I said, no. And so she leaves and goes to get another doctor. So at this point, I'm like, okay, I know what's happening. And I just kind of the floodgates open. I just started it was like this visceral reaction. I just started sobbing. And I remember he came in, he's looking, and he asked me the same questions. Have you had cramping? Have you had bleeding? And I remember him saying, do you feel pregnant? And I was like, I guess, when you're 6 weeks pregnant, you I don't know what that means. Like you might not feel pregnant. I said, I think so. And then he looked further and he said, I'm so sorry. This is a demise. And I just remember that word and being like, what? And I kind of at that point, since I was alone, I think I kind of went into shock mode. So I was just completely shocked. And I called my husband. He goes, okay, so what is it? Is it 1? I said, none. I said, there's nothing. And he was just completely thrown aback. He's like, what do you mean? There's nothing. I remember just saying, I don't think I could do this. I don't think I could do this. I was just completely, just thrown. And I just knew though, meanwhile, my daughter's at home, my brother was watching her, and I'm like, I got to get home to my daughter now. So it was really, really hard.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
This podcast is sponsored by Skylight Calendar. Let's be real. Running a household can be exhausting and chaotic. And finding the perfect Mother's Day gift, it's not exactly a no-brainer. Until now. The Skylight Calendar is the best way to organize the family and give everyone, especially mom, some peace of mind to enjoy the things that matter most. The Skylight Calendar is a smart, touchscreen calendar that keeps track of and manages the chores, dinner planning, groceries, and to-dos for the whole family. The Skylight Calendar automatically syncs each family member's digital calendars and displays them all together on one color-coded touchscreen. It even doubles as a digital picture frame, so you can finally share all those special moments that are just sitting on your phone. As a limited-time offer for our listeners, get 15% off your purchase of a Skylight Calendar when you go to skylightcal.com/easy. That's SKYLIGHTCAL.com/easy. Get 15% off your Mother's Day purchase now at skylightcal.com/easy.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
I know. So I hear these stories. I had a story like that. I actually had 2 stories, which I didn't realize, again, was rainbow baby. When I was talking to Ursula, she's like, you have a double rainbow baby.
Oh.
So I understand that. No, it's okay. I'm pretty open about it. But each story, like every time I hear it, it is just, it's heartbreaking because everyone, there is a loss. Even if it's early, it's still a loss. It's an expectation. And you went for a bit of a roller coaster of 1 to 2 to 1 to what? It's, thank you for sharing that. I think
absolutely.
The more people hear this and understand, a lot of people go through it. Again, I don't remember the statistics off the top of my head, but that it is common, but it's real. And finding support and hearing other people have gone through it, I think can feel very supportive.
Yeah, that's why, like, when this was happening, I found there were kind of different reactions around me. Some people feeling like, oh, okay, I won't bring this up because I don't want you to think about it. And meanwhile, it's like, I'm thinking about this all day. So I'd rather, for me personally, I know everyone's different with grief, but for me personally, I wanted to talk about it. And I wanted people to ask me how I was doing. And I also kind of made this promise to myself. I said to honor these twins that could have been and for some reason aren't. I'm always going to talk about them. And it's not something I'm ashamed of. It's something that I think it just makes me feel better to, not keep it a secret because I knew that my mother had miscarriages. I knew my mother-in-law had, so it was helpful at least to know. But the more I talk to people now, I realize it's like, I've seen statistics like 1 in 4. So it's very, very common.
Yeah, it's a lot more common than people think. And I like that you talk about it and that you want to find support. I think it's really hard when people don't, maybe they think they're ashamed or they question if they did anything. I remember my doctor, in hindsight, I'm like, oh, he definitely saw something weird because I knew with my son, he took blood at the first time that he did the ultrasound. And I also, being a little crazy about these things, like, what's the heartbeat? Like, you saw something and knew. And the fact that your doctor was trying to be like, do you see that? Do you see that?
Yeah.
I could relate because my doctor's like, oh, we'll take blood the next time. And then I'm like, because I went at 8 and then 12 weeks. And I remember also I brought my son to that 12-week one thinking, it's all fine. And my husband wasn't there. And so I had to kind of gather Shay up and get back. And so I hear you on how overwhelming it can be. Like you're by yourself and you hear this, you just want to reach out to your support team and be like, what's going on? Yes, exactly. And the hard part with this was I hadn't told anybody because we were, my husband and I were like, let's at least find out if it's 1 or 2 babies. I don't know. We kind of wanted to know more. And it was hard for me, but I didn't even tell my best friends in this few-week period. So I had no one that knew. Oh. So that it was. So then you're like, guess what? Exactly. So that was. I learned from that. Like when I was blessed to get pregnant again with this pregnancy, I'm telling people very early that I love because if something were to happen again, I can't go through this thing. Yeah. When I call, hi, I was pregnant and it was twins and now I'm not anymore. It was horrible. Feeling, I had never felt that alone. I remember that morning when I woke up after, I was like, I'm completely alone. Then I started making the calls and talking to people, which helped. And how did you handle it? What did you say to people? I think I had 1 or 2 friends that I texted immediately when I was in that shock mode because I was like, help? What do I do? I have to go home to my daughter now, and I needed support. But most of my family and friends, I remember the next day I went for a walk and I just was calling people and letting them know, and it was horrible. But it was strange that first day. I had this adrenaline, almost okay, I got to get this done. I'm going to tell everyone. So I almost felt okay, a little bit numb probably, as I was telling people. And then once I told everyone, that's kind of when
I think the reality kind of sunk in that night. Yeah, it was tough. I wish I had told people before. I really do.
So what about this time? How early did you tell people?
So I told people, a few people very early, like from the positive pregnancy test. And I said, like, please don't act excited or get excited, or I just want to tell you, like, it was like hard for me. I didn't want to hear like, oh my God, I felt very protective this time now of myself, of not getting attached, because with that second pregnancy, I was like jumping ahead so far in my mind.
You're buying a minivan.
Yeah. I'm like, we're going to get a minivan. We're going to have 2 kids. How are they going to fit in our apartment? We were like, I'm like, I guess we'll put
order
them in
the
our
bunk
room.
beds.
Yeah. Yeah, I was looking at like cribs and bunk beds and all yeah, exactly. I was doing the online research. I was jumping way ahead, and I found that obviously made it harder. So for this time, I'm like, I kind of tried to stay more present and be like, this baby is only cells right now that are dividing. Like, this isn't, I tried to just like detach for a while until that 12-week appointment. Then I felt a little bit more at ease.
So you feel like your perception of your current pregnancy changed?
Oh yeah, definitely. Take it much less for granted, but also, in a way. So it's like, I had my daughter before, so I've been through pregnancy, so I have less worries because I'm kind of, I've been through this. At the same time, there's a underlying worry all the time where I'm like, something can go wrong at any time just because of that's what happened. And, even though I'm later on now, I'm 21 weeks, still, I thought it would go away, but it's not really going away. I still have a little bit of fear.
So compared to your first pregnancy, which if you got pregnant, and I'm just saying kind of my relationship to what you're saying in my own experience, I got pregnant. Again, I was really blessed, especially since I was what one would call an older mom. I got pregnant very quickly I've been pregnant now 4 times with 2 kids. They were very quick. So I felt like I was pretty carefree with my first pregnancy. And then with my after the 2 miscarriages, my perception changed. Like, I was more cautious. Would you describe that something similar?
In some ways I am more cautious, but for me, it's been almost like mentally more cautious or something. Like,
mentally, like not trusting it as much.
Yes, exactly. Like between every appointment, I am like terrified, and I'm like, now I'm finally, I feel movement more, which is comforting. Yes. But before that, I had a few days there around 18 weeks. I'm like, I haven't felt anything. There's probably something wrong. And I had to really like kind of talk myself out of it. But yeah, my first pregnancy, totally. I got pregnant. It was fine. And I just kind of thought, okay, this is how it goes. So I didn't have any of these. Also, being my second child, I just know a lot more moms now, and I've heard a lot more stories. So you kind of hear all these kind of scary stories. And I find that too. It's like I know too much. So it makes it harder.
I remember one time I talked myself into hysteria. I was by myself. I think Shay must have been in preschool. And it was probably around the same. Maybe the baby was big enough that I would feel movement, but I didn't feel movement. And I just talked myself, like, you can go down a rabbit hole. Like, I talked myself into like, oh my God, something's wrong. Like, I was pushing the belly around. I was putting ice on top of the belly. I was starting to drink juice. It was maybe a 5 to 10 minute downward spiral that felt like hours. But I had gone to a dark place of like, oh, she's dead. Like, I talked to myself and then I had to talk myself out of it after. Again, it was probably only 5 or 10 minutes, but I was like pushing my belly around. Like, I did everything. She was probably asliep. I did
the same thing. I was pushing the belly. I'm like, come on, just
wake up, give me a kick. Tell me to go away. And I think that's what happens when at times, when one does go in a little, I don't want to use the word naive, but again, carefree. And then you have a stumble or a bump or a disappointment. I think going forward, it's hard to really trust. And I think you and I are not the only people that could fall into this, like, what's going on? Like, I would suspect.
Totally.
Yeah.
I almost called the doctor. I was almost like, to go in and hear the heartbeat.
I was moments from calling my midwife, like, and rushing myself somewhere.
I looked online. There's like apps where you could hear the heartbeat. And I was like, that's probably not a good idea to use your phone to hear the heartbeat, but I almost downloaded one. Like,
oh yeah, no. I think I actually ran into my bedroom. I actually have a stethoscope because I did this midwifery assistant training, and I was trying with the stethoscope. Which, for those that listen, maybe it's just me, but I could not hear a heartbeat with a stethoscope, which is probably why there's a Doppler or an ultrasound.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
all right, so you and I, let's think about this. For those listening, if you and I went through this, let's assume that many other people have done this.
Yeah.
What do we think would be helpful to tell the community? Don't push your baby?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, what do you think you could have done differently? Because I'm trying to think, like, what could I have done not to go down that path?
Right. I don't know. Honestly, I'm not sure if it's completely avoidable if you've been through something traumatic like a loss. I feel like there's going to be times where you get to that vulnerable place and you're going to get scared. And maybe it is reaching out to your care provider if you really need that comfort, or just talking to a friend being like, okay, I'm spiraling. I'm going to this place and
pull me out.
Yeah. I know for me, like, that communication helps. When I get stuck in that place in my head, it's like you said, it's a rabbit hole. And the only way I can get out is if someone else is helping me.
Yeah.
So I would say if you have someone you trust, reach out with that to them and just tell them sometimes then you say it out loud and you're like, oh, I think I'm being a little
dramatic.
Yeah.
I like that, saying out loud. Yes. I think that's important. I also do think I like your idea because, again, you and I are both like moments from calling our care provider. I think that's for those listening. I think if you need that reassurance, do it. That's what they're there for.
Yeah,
and if your care provider,
I'm sure they've heard it before.
I'm sure. And if the care provider is getting annoyed with you, that's also a sign pretty early on that maybe that care provider is not the right one for you.
Totally.
Because they should be empathetic and supportive, especially if there was a loss, to hear where you're coming from.
Yes. And that's why actually with my current pregnancy, I switched care providers because of how I felt I was treated during my miscarriage. It was really...
let's talk about that because, I'm very supportive. I'm very proactive about making sure you're with a care provider that you share philosophy with. Because if your care provider is not on board with supporting you in the way that you need to feel supported, it's going to affect your birth. So, talk to me a little bit about why you switched and how you found your new care provider.
Yeah, so the practice I was with had been highly recommended, and so I kind of previously the practice I was with. So I kind of went in being like, oh, everyone says they're so great. So they're great. And I met with one of the doctors for just a regular appointment, the year before I was trying to conceive. And when I look back, I did get a weird feeling from day one, but I did not listen to myself. And I thought, oh, well, people say this practice is great, so I continued. And then, my experience with her was so awful during this whole thing from that first appointment where she's like, I need someone else to come in here, where she was confused and not communicating with me, to calling me the day before I had to get a DNC surgery to remove the baby. So she called me the night before and was like, hi, so here's what I'm doing tomorrow. And she just launched into the technicality of the DNC. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wait a second, I didn't ask. Like, what's going on? And hearing that was like traumatizing because that's not what I needed to hear at that point. I wanted her to say like, so how are you? Do you have any questions for me? And
they didn't give you another option
they did. So
did they offer you the vacuum?
No, they didn't offer me the vacuum. No.
That's what I had my midwife. That's what my OB told me about the DNC, and it was so like what you said, just like tomorrow you're going to get checked in. It's a surgery. You're not going to eat after this point. You're going to go. I was like, what? Don't forget, I was with my 1.5-year-old at that point by myself.
Oh,
and
my
I
God,
called my midwife, and she's like, nope. There's something called I think it was like a vacuum extraction. It's basically like an abortion, but the baby had passed, so they kind of just suck it out somehow. And I was fully awake.
So you didn't have to go under?
No, I was fully awake.
Oh, okay.
So for listeners out there, that if this is something you may encounter, there are options. I didn't have to go under. I was fully awake. I did have a reaction to the cytotec. We now realize I'm allergic to it. But that's a problem. But it was really not very invasive. They just dilated my cervix and took some sort of vacuum and kind of sucked it out. My husband was there, fully awake. Left like half an hour later.
Yeah, and I think it's good. I mean, and then there's also the option of waiting. For the miscarriage to happen on its own.
Yeah, she said that got a little problematic with the blood loss, but that is another option.
Yes, I think, and it's such a personal decision. I think for me, I wanted to be knocked out. Like I was like, I just snuck me out. I don't want to know what's happening.
Yeah,
I didn't want to necessarily know what they were doing when I kind of. That's how I felt. But I know everyone's going to experience it differently and say, like, because it was then a surgery and I had to go under, and that recovery was tough. So
you realized at that point that she wasn't particularly appealing to your softer side. And at which point then did you break up with her or just not go back to her? What happened after that?
Well, what happened, I called the practice. I said, hi, I want to switch doctors within your practice because I had met another doctor. No, they said they don't allow that. They do not allow you to switch doctors within their practice, which I thought was so strange. Have you heard that before?
No, but I haven't really inquired about that. So I didn't realize. Right. I mean, because I guess when I think about people that go in for a birth situation, they know they're going to get any doctor and they're going to see multiple doctors. But I didn't realize that, say, like my doctor, Dr. Harry Lee, he's with a bigger practice with like Dr. Ju and Dr. Moritz. I didn't know that should I decide for whatever reason I didn't want to see Dr. Lee that I couldn't switch. No, I didn't know that.
Well, that with the new practice I'm at, which I found from inquiring to different people in the neighborhood and actually asking Caprice, one of your teachers, and they let you switch and, whoever you want to see. But for whatever reason, the previous practice, they were like, they actually sent me an email about it. And I showed my husband, he goes, this seems to be about money. It's like they didn't want, or maybe a lot of people want to switch from this doctor. So they have to make a policy. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not sure. But that's what, when they said that, I said, really? I can't switch? Okay. And then I found a new practice and I pieced out.
So when you found that new practice, did you interview them or how did you realize they'd be a good fit for you?
So again, this was referral, but this was from Caprice, who had been she's a doula, so she'd attended births that they'd done. Mm-hmm. So I thought, okay, that's a good perspective. And then I just kept hearing their name. So I did. I went in kind of for an interview, but also it was after the miscarriage, I was like flipping out and thinking there was something wrong with me and I'd never be pregnant again. And I was just, spiraling. And I met with one of the doctors. She was so comforting and I didn't feel like I was being rushed. And she was actually listening to me. So I said, okay, this is what I'm looking for. It's also a all female practice. And there's something really nice about that for me. I prefer that kind of the female energy with these kind of appointments. So I've met almost all the doctors now, and I've felt really comfortable with all of them.
Because that's going to reflect how they are with you ongoing, during your pregnancy, your prenatal appointments, and then also during your birth. Are they going to rush you? Are they going to listen to you? Are they going to respect what you're asking, and they're going to respect your wishes? So I think those early meetings say quite a bit about how they practice. And I love that you decided, peace out, I'm done. You guys.
Bye. Yeah. I'm like, you probably won't even realize I left. Because, it was strange. I felt like even when she saw me, like she didn't recognize me. It was weird. So the interpersonal skills weren't there. So with this, it's like, yeah, I just feel so much more comfortable. And it's also a lesson. Like, I wish I had trust my instinct at the beginning. So I would say to anyone listening, if you have a weird feeling about your care provider, listen to that. And, especially it's easier to switch earlier on in your pregnancy.
Yes.
So
because then it does
see
become
who else is out there.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, given that you work with new parents and young children, How do you think your loss affected your work and then being pregnant again?
Yeah, well, so I had the DNC on a Thursday, and I was teaching that Saturday.
Oh, goodness.
And not only was I teaching, it was a birthday party for a 2-year-old.
Oh.
Which requires like an incredible amount of energy.
Weren't you still bleeding?
I was. Yes, I was. And so I live on 82nd Street. This was on 73rd, and I couldn't even walk there.
Oh.
But I knew, I was like, okay, I can have someone else do this, but it's like I knew this little girl, and she'd been excited about her party, and I know what it's like to be attached to your teacher when you're 2. And so I had an assistant come help me. And I didn't tell her why, but I was like, can you just, help me do the poses? And so part of, that was rough, but I was also like, I want to do this. I need to do this. But it was like, I was like seconds from crying every second because I'm, around all these kids, and then people have their babies there. So that was hard for a long time, like teaching little kids, seeing other pregnant women, seeing them with siblings. I told a friend, I was like, it's almost like every time I see something like that, it's like a bullet. It's like hits me again. I'm like, oh. So that was really hard for a while. But I feel really blessed because a few months later I was able to conceive again, and this pregnancy has been going well. So that's helped me move on a little bit in that regard and not get stuck in that all those feelings. But now teaching, now I'm 21 weeks, and I'm like trying to do snake pose. I can't lay on my belly.
No,
and I'm like,
I'm glad you realized that. I would have put it as one of your teachers at Prenatal Yoga Center and say, no, don't squish the baby. That's a pretty good rule across the board. Don't squish the baby.
Don't squish the baby. Yeah, that just feels wrong. I'm like, this doesn't feel right. Or like, I'm usually like jumping like a frog and doing, I can't do that stuff right now. Like I can't, it doesn't feel right.
Well, you shouldn't. Maybe you could, but you shouldn't.
Yeah. So that I've actually decided, like a few of my classes I'm going to pause for a little bit. That's the benefit of it being my own business. Yeah. And then a few I've started hiring more teachers. Mm-hmm. So I'm like training people and having them assist me so I could gradually pass off other classes because physically right now I'm like, I think come the new year, I want to just take a pause from teaching because it's enough chasing my 2-year-old around all day. It's like, I just need a little bit of a physical break, but I'm happy to be able to run the business, the administrative side and support my teachers.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
I think that will really help you grow. Also, having grow your company, having more people, and then stepping back and being the director.
Yeah, letting go a little bit. Definitely.
Well, what advice, if any, or support that you received around the time of your miscarriage that you felt was helpful, and would you share it?
Yeah, I remember I read one blog. Her name's Christina Kuzmich, and she's like a mom blogger, and she makes videos. And she was open. She actually also lost a twin pregnancy. And she said, let people take care of you. Like if someone wants to come watch, if you have other children, if they want to come watch your children, let them. If someone wants to bring you a meal, let them do it. If someone wants to come, clean up your living room, whatever it is, like accept that support and whatever support is around you. And I found that helpful. I had to, because it's usually hard for me to ask for help, but I was like, I'm just going to let my family help me, let my friends help me. I was blessed to have a lot of people around, and kind of let go a little. Also let go of the guilt. I'm like, yes, I'm going to put on Peppa Pig for a while because I can't, I just, emotionally I can't do it right now. So I'm not going to feel guilty about putting on the TV more or, doing what I have to do to just kind of trudge through it and work my way through it. So that's what I would say. Accept help. And if you don't have help, ask for help because you're going to need that emotional and physical support too. for a long time after.
I totally agree. I think we have put a lot of pressure on ourselves, especially I would say the main caregiver, often the mother, about the kind of, not putting screen time in. And sometimes we just need that. Sometimes you just need that space. Because I think you can be a better parent if you're not run down. Like, think if you didn't do that and you were trying to, do all the activities that you had once done and you were not in the emotional place to do it, you're better off, giving yourself and your daughter that space so that you could nourish and take care of yourself. Because the quality of care you're going to give probably would not have been as good.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think there's any harm in screen time in those times where you need a break. They need a break. And I didn't think
serves everyone.
Would be good for her. Exactly. It does.
Do you have any words of wisdom for someone going through a miscarriage healing time right now?
It's just tough. It's really hard. And, you kind of just have to go through it. So it's funny. I was just reading my daughter a book. We're going on a bear hunt, this classic book. And they're like, oh no, there's a river. And they say, like, we can't go over it. We can't go under it. We have to go through it. And they keep saying that about different obstacles. And I was like, this is life. I'm like, like with my miscarriage, you can't go over the grief. You can't go under it. You really, unfortunately, you have to trudge through it.
Yeah.
So my advice is to try to feel what you're feeling. That doesn't mean I didn't drink a lot of wine during that time. I was feeling it. Yeah, but it helped me. So, like, be kind to yourself. If you need the wine, if you need chocolate, whatever it is.
Chocolate and wine.
Chocolate and wine, even better. But my advice is to try to not deny what you're feeling, because in my experience, being able to sit in it and be like, yeah, this is horrible, but I need to get through this. I think ultimately helped me. And you know what? It even comes up now. The grief still, it comes back every now and then. It will hit me in different times. And just like accepting it and being kind to yourself, saying there's no timeline to grief. You're not like, oh, this many months passed and now I have a healthy baby, so I should feel better. It might take a while.
And it might keep coming up for you every year at that time.
Yes. I found that when the due date passed, even when I hear people pregnant with twins, little reminders, you think about them.
I love your advice. I call that, I have these weird sayings that pop in my mind. I call that playing in the mud, when you have to get through. And I've had some challenges in my life, and I just, have to play in the mud and get through it, because it will erupt at other times. Like, those feelings don't just go away. They're in your system, in your being, and unless you process them, they're going to come up probably at the most inconvenient time. So
yeah, probably when you're around other people and you start crying out of nowhere. Yeah, it's going to pop up.
It's going to come up, kind of like a zit. So I got a little pimple.
Where did that come from? Yeah.
Yeah, so I love that. Play in the mud and just kind of get through it. So I want to shift gears. So as a parent, what was the most valuable advice you received when pregnant?
Well, I think of what I heard at PYC all the time, which was to advocate for myself.
Yay!
Which I think that played into this whole situation where I was like, this doesn't seem right. I want another ultrasound. Like, where else can I go? Had I not asked for that, they probably would have been like, see you at 12 weeks, or whatever. And I wouldn't have known. So that's a big one, to advocate, ask questions. Even after my daughter was born with breastfeeding, I had learned at PYC, like, just ask for help. So I'm like, is there a lactation consultant? And I buzzed the nurses constantly. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Help me. They're not necessarily going to jump and help. But if you ask, you're going to get more help. So I think the big one is to just take ownership and say, like, this is my baby. This is my pregnancy. No one knows this baby as well as I do. And ask if you need something.
Yeah, because no one's going to live your life for you and make it easy. Like, you got. I love that. Like, you got to ask for help, and you have to take ownership of your life and your child and your difficulties and your joys. So because no one's going to. Most likely, no one's going to try to make things necessarily easier for you. So we got to do it ourselves.
Exactly.
So, what advice would you like to share with new and expected parents?
I love the advice I've gotten, which is everything is a phase. So
yeah.
Everything. So that goes for pregnancy when you're like in your third trimester and you think you're going to be pregnant forever and it feels like it's going on forever. It's a phase. It's going to pass. Newborn stage feels like forever. You're never going to get through it. You're never going to sleep again. It does pass. Now I'm in the 2-year stage where we've got tantrums and we have the testing. And I just when I get really upset, I'm like, you know what? This feels permanent, but it's not. It's going to change. And then there's probably going to be something else that's hard, but everything does pass. So just keeping that in mind, especially in those moments where you feel like it really does feel like forever sometimes. You're like, I am stuck. This isn't changing. It will eventually. And then you'll look back and say, oh, yeah, I remember that. That was rough, but you move on and you keep going.
Oh, I love all your thoughts and all your advice. Where can people find you and your work?
So I've got, for my kids' yoga company, it's Gem Yoga NYC. It's JEM, my initials, Yoga NYC. Yeah.
I never put that together. I was like, where'd
that come from?
All right, now I get it.
And it actually happens to also be my name combined with my daughter's, Emily, so I liked that too.
That's kind of what I thought. It was more about that, because I knew your name, obviously, and I knew your daughter's name. I'm like, got it, okay.
Yes, so Gem Yoga. I'm on Instagram, Gem Yoga NYC. I'm on Facebook. And then my blog is liftedintotheworld.com. That was named after when I had to schedule a C-section with my daughter because she was breech. I spoke with someone who comforted me and she said, some babies just want to be lifted into the world. And I remember those words just stuck with me. So that's the name of my motherhood blog, if you want to see that.
Yeah, I'll put that in our show notes. And I remember that very much from your first of your surrendering. Like you did everything you could to try to turn that baby. And then there's a matter of surrendering. And I think that's great advice to share with new parents too. Like, surrender, it doesn't mean that you just are helpless or just kind of lay there. But, there's times where our pure will and force doesn't make things happen. And sometimes we have to just soften and surrender and watch as things unfold.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. I felt like, okay, this baby knows something I don't, and I need to let it go.
And she was lifted into the world, into some loving arms and some very happy parents. Oh, well, thank you so much for spending some time. And for those that are in the New York area, we do have Jessica's classes at PYC. In fact, soon, because I just saw a couple registrations come through.
Oh, great. I think that's December 11th, I want to say.
I don't know. I just looked and I'm like, oh, look, 2 more registered. Yay. So
great.
If this comes out before then and you want to do some yoga with your little one, check out the website, the Prenatal Yoga Center website.
Yeah, it's called Storytime Yoga. And that's great for babies 6 months and up to toddlers of 3 years old. So
it's a lot of fun. Well, thank you so much for spending some time and for sharing your story. It is brave and courageous and heartfelt that you opened up to help other people and to tell your story.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, thanks so much. Right, take care. Bye.
This has been an episode of Yoga Birth Babies, produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. You can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. I'm Deb Flashenberg. Thanks for listening.
For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.